Those Days with the Monsters, Part 32. The Cuman's ship had docked at a small station near a sharp blue star. Kirill found himself staring at the star through the viewports as they drew closer to the station. The star the Cuman's Earth orbited had been yellow, the one Richthen orbited was a pale orange, and the one that had shone into the ship as it hung over Kazurkan had been white. This blue was strange, brilliant, and somehow enchanting, even if it made the world look a bit mournful with its faint blue tinge. It also seemed to add an otherworldly touch to the things it shone on. "Captain Stevens, a pleasure as always." The Cuman on the bridge was slim and had clear eyes that a Cuman might call grey-blue, though Kirill only saw them as grey. This Cuman also had the chest protrusions, along with white hair bound tightly to the back of the head. "Thank you for the help, Effie. You didn't have to come see it off yourself." The captain smiled slightly. "That's rubbish and you know it. I still owe you." The same light voice that Kirill had heard before sounded again on the bridge, this time in person. "I think we're about to run out of debts to call in if you keep going like this. We both know it'll be costly if Iron Shoes gets appropriated." "Best to make sure it doesn't then. That's your job, not mine, Stevens." The Cuman's grey eyes settled on Kirill. "Is this the alien you mentioned? He's cute." Kirill's frills flared a bit yellow, and the Cuman's eyebrows rose. "Is this for disguise or for emotion?" "Emotion, we think. A few colours are pretty obvious. If you scare him, it'll go red, for example." The captain held up his hand. "Please don't try it, though. It can't be good for his heart." "Being on your ship might be worse for his heart in the long run," the Cuman commented. But she didn't seem to be arguing as much as making a joke. "Well, we're still working on that." The captain looked over at Kirill and bared his teeth. "Kirill, this is Effie, or FG, or the Fairy Godmother. Or if we're being formal, Sirius Marquess Ephemera Sade." Kirill glanced at the captain quickly. "Marquis?" From the look of the captain's face, he shouldn't have asked. "Never mind, I'll ask later. Nice to meet you, Marquis." The white-haired Cuman glanced at the captain. "Could I get a translation, Captain Stevens?" "He says it's nice to meet you. His translator picks up English pretty well, but since you don't have one, I can relay it." "Thank you." The cool grey eyes fixed on Kirill. "I hear that you've been helping the Fisher with species negotiations." Kirill blinked. "Sorry, what? The Fisher?" The captain's mouth stretched slightly, showing more teeth. "Did we never tell you the name of the ship? She's the Carrie Fisher. Dopey wanted to rename her the Bashful, but Bashful wasn't having it." Dopey made a slight grumbling sound from the side. "Don't see why. She's the ship and the ship is her," he muttered. "Oh." Kirill had never thought about this ship having an actual name. He had always just thought of it as the Cuman's ship. "The Carrie Fisher? Does it mean anything?" "It's the name of a special person on Earth. She's famous for helping to spark humanity's desire to go into space." The captain once again bared his teeth slightly. "All the old stars have memorials in the museum." Kirill wanted to ask further, but this was probably not the time. Effie seemed to be somebody important, and he had learned early not to catch the attention of important people, not unless they came looking for him. Yes, he's been helping us a lot. He knows the culture, and we don't, so that's been valuable. Officially he's our cultural liaison, but practically he's our outlet to the greater universe at large. Effie bared her teeth. "Interesting. I'll have to ask you to spare some time to make another translator while you're out. I think he and I should have a long discussion." Kirill's frills flared red in alarm. Had he already offended her? Aside from General Corbis, everyone in high positions he'd encountered seemed easily angered. Now she wanted to have a discussion with him. That sounded like a disciplinary hearing if he'd ever heard one. Easy there, Effie. A lot of Earth foods aren't cleared for him yet. You can't have a tea and scotch party with him until we clear it for him. You understand, right? The captain stepped sideways, slightly in front of Kirill, and his voice sounded a bit sharper. He's our squishy, and we're gonna protect him. Effie's eyes widened. Kirill's translator informed him that the look meant surprise, but Kirill thought there might be some hidden amusement in it too. The translator's interpretation of Cuman faces was getting more and more annoying, more and more simplistic. Kirill couldn't believe he'd relied on it to understand expressions in the first place. Well, that's impressive. Does he know you've taken that role on? What role? The captain seemed confused. I'm just the captain. It's Sleepy that took that role. If he was here, he'd have done it instead. Effie stood for a moment, her face hard to read. Kirill's translator kept stating an error and asking him to try again. If he could speak the Cuman's language, he'd have switched it off by about the third repeat. Did you keep him off the bridge for my sake, Stevens? I would have, but when I went up to tell him, he said he already knew. The captain sighed. Effie, I don't want to tell you what to do or how to feel. Just know he's trying. He's trying really hard, and he doesn't expect it to do anything either. He doesn't expect anything to change, he just wants... Stevens, you need to stop. Effie's voice shook slightly. A chill ran up Kirill's spine at the icy tone. You have no right. The captain looked at the floor. Right. Sorry, Effie. After a moment of awkward silence, when the rest of the crew shifted slightly and looked anywhere but at the centre of the bridge, the captain took a deep breath. Right. So we gonna install this thing or what? Effie nodded. So you know, there are only 4 people besides us that know about it. One of the benefits for position here. No one will know until you fire it, so don't play about with it. As soon as it's fired, the cat's out of the bag. It can never be undone. Remember that. Kirill watched the captain's expression change from awkwardness to something that might be similar to his frills turning black. I know. Slowly, Kirill's frills turned red, the spines black. He had never seen the captain look that grim. Angry, yes. Disgusted, yes. And even coldly determined. But this? Never this. And you'll have to live with that burden. And no, the captain nodded once, slowly. Thanks, Effie. I hope we won't need it. Oh, right. I found you someone. His name is James Halen. He specialises in active combat trauma. Does he know he's going to be called Jiminy? I may not have told him about that part. After a moment, the captain spoke again. Does he know he'll be working with Jeff Chalmer? Effie nodded her head. That part he does know. He says it's not a problem. Then we'll be happy to have him aboard. Thanks, Effie. Don't mention it. I still owe you a favour or two. With an awkward amusement noise, the captain looked out the main viewport. You paid those back years ago. I think you're just making excuses. And what will you do about it if I am? A quiet amusement noise ran through the Cuman crew. It seemed the awkward moment had passed. Finally, the captain looked back at Effie. Right. Well, we got a potential war crime to install, don't we? Thank you for listening to Those Days with the Monsters.